Hello everyone and welcome to stream number 4 from my laundry/hobby dungeon room. I am so excited to be here today with you guys. I hope that you guys are looking forward to what we got going on. Today I'm going to be doing some assembly, and I'm going to be assembling Hawkeye and Black Widow Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm very excited about. They are part of our next wave of releases that will be coming out. Depending on where you are in the world and kind of how the pandemic is affecting your countries. There's no exact street date. I think some people might be seeing these this next month. Some people might be seeing it after. Of course, we're trying to do our best along with Asmodee to make sure that everyone out there is staying safe, that we're doing our best to support retailers in the best way possible by making sure that we're being kind of specific in where regions are having new releases sent out, as well as what we can do through the mail and stuff like that. So know that these are coming your way. They are all ready to go, and as soon as we can get them into stores for you guys, they will be there as well. So I'm very excited to dive into these. I've been waiting for these characters for a long time. We'll talk a little bit about them as we go through, and I'm just going to be kind of walking through my steps on assembly and how I basically prepare miniatures for myself in order to get them ready to paint. So this is just kind of going to show my approach to how I do stuff, and everybody kind of does things different, but hopefully you'll find something kind of interesting in terms of where we go. So let's just get off my beautiful super long-haired face and move on to this little bad boy right here. So this is it. This is CP24 with all the colors, very fancy. I'm not going to be cracking open any of the cards or anything. I'm just going to go right in, and I'm going to pull out the plastics, and I'm going to go to my handy dandy assembly guide because I have never actually built Black Widow. I've only built Hawkeye once. So get these instructions out. We're in a place where I can see them so I can make sure that I'm going, and we will move on from there. Alright, so just to kind of walk you through like the tools that I always find very useful. Obviously, hobby knife, super important. Anybody who's done any kind of assembly will know. Really great for cleaning, scraping, mold lines, stuff like that. Hobby clippers, also really, really important. Much more important, I would say, than the hobby knife, honestly, just to get things off the frame in a nice, clean fashion. So I always have those around. I also always have a file or two. Sometimes scraping isn't going to work, so having a nice hobby file or several. I actually have a lot, but I typically find myself using the round ones quite a bit. And then, of course, I have a clay shaper. So I have a lot of these too. This is just kind of like a stiff rubber like tipped device, and I use it for when I need to use either hobby putty. So this is kind of a pre-mixed basic putty type. There's a lot of different types out there. I just happen to have the Tamiya one. But it works great for filling in little gaps and stuff like that. I also have my handy dandy green stuff. So this is a 2-part epoxy that I always keep close by. You mix these 2 parts together, the blue and the yellow turn into green. That's why it's called green stuff. And this is just a sculpting putty that you can use. I almost never need it when I'm putting together Crisis Protocol miniatures, but I like to keep it just in case. And then, of course, I've got my... I like plastic glue, so this is my thin plastic cement. And then I also have some super glue just in case I need it, but I probably won't use it here. And then the last little trick is if I'm going to use that green stuff, I'm going to use some chapstick. And the reason I have the chapstick is that this is probably the best way to keep that putty from sticking to your tools and from your fingers and everything else. So chapstick, really, really useful. Any kind of lip balm, a really helpful kind of item that I don't think a lot of people think about. I learned that trick from the sculptors that I've worked with before who do traditional stuff. And it makes sculpting or having to like do fillers or even sculpting with putty in any kind of shape or form so much easier, so much nicer. You can use water too, but chapstick is definitely the way that I like to go. Plus it makes your fingers smell like, you know, cherry or whatever flavor you have. So let's start with Hawkeye because he's at the top of the assembly guide. And somebody mentioned their numbers. Yes, that's correct. There are numbers on the assembly guides for this one. And that was kind of a work in progress to get to the place where we needed to in terms of manufacturing and production, where we could confidently put the numbers on the parts and make sure that they weren't going to change for us. Alright, so I'm just going to start. It looks like I need B3 and B2. My step 1 is to build the torso. So my 2 torso pieces are right here. If you find yourself without assembly guides, I want to be honest, 90% of the time start with the torso. It's going to be your main component for building. So I'm just going to grab my clippers, and I'm going to make sure that I put the clippers flush to the part that I'm going to clip. So I don't want to go this way because that's going to leave a lot of crap. I want to go this way, and I'm just going to snip. And the thing that I'm really excited about with these guys is the minimum number of ejection points that we've really been able to hit. So like there's only 1 on each torso. You know, you've got the 2 down here, but they're on the flat, so you're never going to see them. It just makes the cleaning and stuff go so much faster and everything to work better. So I'm going to do a quick clean just because I want to make sure that this part's smooth because that torso is going to have to go on the legs. So what I do is I just grab the piece in my hands and I come across that way. The one thing that I don't have here that I wish I did is Blu-Tac. I don't think I'm going to need it today, but Blu-Tac is another great tool. You can put a little bit on like your blade or on your file, and you can use it to stick the part. If you have little pieces, you can actually, maybe we'll try it out. I have a little bit of Blu-Tac on one of my painting things, but you use it to hold the piece onto another part, and then you can glue it on, and it makes everything super nice and very easy to do. All right, so I'm just going to clean this. So typically what I'll do is I'll clean where the injection port is, and I'll just trim that down. And then instead of trying to find the mold line off of each individual piece, if it's 2 pieces like this, I will glue the piece together first, and then I will go from there and see if I have any lines that need to be cleaned or anything like that. So one of the big tricks or things to consider is that a lot of times people will just take their glue and they'll just slap it in where the key is, where the hole is. You don't really want to do that if you can avoid it. It's better to put the glue around the edges. And the reason for that is hydraulics. So if you put fluid inside of an enclosed space and then you try to fill that space with something else, like say a male key, hydraulic pressure is going to build up and it's going to push the pieces apart. So if you can avoid putting liquid or any kind of material inside the female part of the key and instead use the edges, you're going to have a lot more success with that piece staying together and holding really nice and tight. So I'm just going to give it a nice little squeeze, make sure that it's all together. Doing really well. Check my top, make sure my pieces are lined up really well. It looks really good. Okay, and then I'm going to stop with this piece for a second, and I'm going to set it to the side. I'm going to let it dry. And I'm going to clean the next couple of pieces. So what that means is it looks like I'm going to be going to the quiver, which is part number 8. So I'm just going to clip that piece off. You'll notice that I also have a nice work surface on which to do. It's not only my backdrop, but I also use it just to protect my desk. Makes pieces easier to find. I actually have a mouse pad mat underneath it, so it's got a little bit of cushion. So if I drop a piece or whatever off the mat, it's not going to bounce and go everywhere for me. So it's just little things like that. All right, so this looks like it's dry. Looking at it, you know, the seams look really good. I'm just going to take it one step further because I want to. So there's a little bit of a seam on the shoulders, obviously where the torso split in half, and you're always going to find this. When you cut 2 things apart, there's always going to be a little bit of a seam. There's a good possibility that once I prime it and I paint it, I'm not going to see the seam at all. However, like, I definitely want to kind of cover that up, and I don't think that I'm really going to need, I could use the putty, but this seam is so slight that instead what I'm going to do, and this is kind of why I like the really thin plastic cement, although you can do this with the thicker stuff too, or even super glue. So I'm just going to take my glue and I'm going to very carefully run it over the seam to kind of fill it up. And because plastic glue denatures the plastic and kind of fuses it together, what will happen is, as long as I don't put my finger on it, and this is a part where you want to be kind of careful, it'll actually fill that gap for me. And then what I can do is I can take my knife or I can take my file and I can just really gently like file over that part, and it's going to create a smooth join. So it's going to get rid of that seam line. So I'm going to let that dry before I go too far into it. I'm going to check out the quiver, because again, I don't want to put my finger in it. If you're going to use glue to fill a gap, don't touch it, because if you put your finger on it, it's going to leave your fingerprint on it. That's true of super glue, although a little less so. Plastic glue, because it denatures the plastic, you're actually going to mold your fingerprint into the plastic. So patience is the name of the game. Don't try to rush through it. I got plenty of time here. So I'm just going to give things the time they need to dry, and if that means that I'm going to move on to cleaning this piece, so I'm just doing a little bit of scraping along the sides where a mold line would be, to make sure that, but these are pretty clean, so just a little bit of extra insurance here. I don't even see anything because I got some time to kill. You'll notice that I'll use the back of the blade just as much as the front of the blade. The back of the blade's nice because it's still sharp enough to scrape really effectively, but if I accidentally push too hard, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the sharp edge, so it's not going to dig into the plastic and pull it off. So depending on the level of part that I'm dealing with, or when I'm coming up this way, I might not want to use the blade. I might want to use this because I don't want to snip that off, which I could with a fresh blade. Also, rare white elk sighting. I put a new X-Acto blade on my knife. Right before this, so look at that. New hobby blade and everything. I think it's probably been over 6 months since last I did that. Alright, so I'm going to pick my torso back up. I'm going to grab my file really quick, and I'm just going to do a quick little sand over the top. And I'm not pushing really hard on this, I just want to kind of smooth out some of that glue that's over the top. And now the thing is that the glue obviously is pretty translucent, so you might still see a little bit of gap. The way you can test that is just take your fingernail and very gently rub over the top, and if your fingernail doesn't catch, then you know that you've solved the seam. So, you mean like this, Anakin's twin? Can you see those numbers? B2, B3, B10, B8? So there you go. Ask and we deliver as quickly as we possibly can. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to move on to the quiver now. I also am going to glue this pouch on. So I'm going to snip that really quick. Okay, so we got the pouch. Do a quick clean on that port. So again, I'm just using my fingers to grip it really tight. If I felt okay, there's no way that my man hands can get in there and hold that part, one solution that you can do, which I've seen several people talk about, is clipped well under. Whoop, is clipped well under the injection part, and then you have a built-in little handle. And you can use that to glue it in, I could use this to help me place the part in if I wanted to. I can also use a little bit of Blu-Tac. But see how I have this now all of a sudden. Ooh, my fat thumb's in the way. There, how about that? There. So now all of a sudden you have this nice little handle to help you out. You don't need to use tweezers, you don't need to do anything like that. So that is always a great option. So this is one of those instances where the key is pretty much what's going to glue it in. So I just want to be really not super crazy on the glue, and I don't want to fill up the female injection, the female part. I just want to make sure that it's got glue in there so it'll set in. I'm just going to push that pouch right on there. Fancy dancy. It's in. Move on to my next part, which is going to be the quiver. Same kind of idea here. Trying to not go crazy with the glue, just enough to get a great join. Lining up my parts. I'm going to just do that. We'll push, and there's our torso coming together. So, all right. So next up, we've got his heads and his head and his arm. His heads, all of his heads, all one of them. So, come in. I'm gonna clip. Here I'm gonna clip. So I'm going to do the weakest parts first, and then I'm going to go to the thickest part. So a really good way to kind of make sure that you don't twist or like snap a part off. And then we're going to need this part. And now there's a couple ways to do this. I'm clipping all the parts for the step. Obviously, if you're worried about losing them or if you're prone to sneezing because it's hay fever time, just make sure that you do them one at a time, clean them off, attach them and everything. But I'm pretty confident in my spot. So I'm just going to take a look at my pieces. I'm going to do a little bit of scraping just for some insurance to make sure that any kind of mold line is gone. I'm not really seeing much on this guy, so that's great. Great. Kind of careful here because it's a thinner part, so I just want to take my time. I think that's like the number one piece of advice I can give somebody is just when you're assembling or painting or anything like that, you're always going to be rewarded by just slowing down a little bit, taking your time, being very considerate in terms of like what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish. Think about the parts, enjoy the process, right? The end result is awesome, and I want to paint these characters like real bad. I've been waiting for almost a year to finally have these in my hand and to be able to add them to my collection, and played them a bunch in playtest and worked on the rules designs and all that stuff, and so it's like, oh, it's finally time. I've been waiting so long. But the last thing I want to do is rush through the process, not take my time and enjoy it, not get the best result that I could have gotten. And so the big trick here is to just slow down and love the process. And it's how you're going to get better at things. It's how you're going to elevate your painting game, because you're not going to have to worry as much about, oh, I love what I did with this person, but I missed this gap, or I missed this mold line. And it's going to happen. I mean, it's just the nature of it. And that doesn't mean that you did anything wrong, but do your due diligence. Enjoy this part of the hobby. It's a huge part of it. And it can be really fun and really relaxing. You go into the tank and just kind of zen out. And start talking to yourself like Bob Ross and making little noises. I feel like I need a really close-in boom mic for this so you guys can hear the scrape. I find the scrape to be so cathartic, so relaxing. It's just like shh. It's fantastic. Okay, I'm happy with those. Come back to my torso. So before I jump forward, just kind of looking at this guy and considering. I'm going to take a little bit of glue. I'm just going to run a little bit over his sides too. Just to do a little bit more concealing of this seam, because I want that to be covered up, and then depending on how the glue does, I can go back and I can do a little bit of filler as well if I want to. Alright. So let's do his head. Let's get Hawkeye's head in there. Around. A nice key to make sure he's looking the right way. Oh, smooth as butter. We got a Hawkeye with a head. The type that I'm using is Tamiya Thin Cement Jump Raven. For those asking what type of glue it is. I think most of the thin application stuff will come with like a little brush for helping to apply, and I really like that. It gives you a lot more control. Get that key right in there. Great, perfect. Last but not least, we'll get his drawn arm. This is just going to key in. Oh, those keys are so smooth. Like that. There we go. Top of our Hawkeye is built. I don't know if I can get that a little closer or not. Let's see. Now will it focus for me? There we go. Alright, so next up, we're going to go to the legs. So the legs are in two parts. We're going to form the lower torso, Voltron style. Close out. So over two legs. Let's have a look here really quick. Do some quick clean. Mold lines. So I'm just kind of looking over the part. He has some really nice sculpted seam in his pants to kind of give it some more texture and some more definition. I don't want to clean that off. I just kind of want to take off any excess material that's left over from the molding process. Really, it's just going to be this injection port part right here. Looks like. Okay, great. So parts are ready. So we're going to do just a quick dry fit so I can see what's going on. So like that. Kind of careful to run it around. Push. Woo! Real nice. So we got a lower half of Hawkeye. Again, just because I want to kind of like seal up that seam. Not to be gratuitous, but I'm doing it. We're just going to run a little bit of plastic glue where the seam is. I'm going to set that off to dry. I'm going to skip ahead one step and I'm just going to clean off this sweet little Hydra symbol rock, this tack rock that Hawkeye is perched upon. Do a quick clean. I don't see any lines. So, alright. So let's go ahead and glue top to bottom. Again, I'm just going to grab my glue, come around, nice layer. Oop. I tried to move it for the camera and then I pushed wrong. A little more light down there. We're not painting, but that doesn't mean that we don't want light. There we go. Oh my gosh, I keep messing up. This is what happens when you try to do like 4 things at once. Look at the camera, do the lights. Stick the thing together. Whoop. Alright, there we go. Hawkeye. Looking really good. Looking really good, Mr. Hawkeye. Very excited. He was such a fun character to kind of like figure out the design for and the spot for. You know, his role in the Avengers and then like what this character brings to the table. More stable standing on his card. That's probably true. He'd definitely be more stable than he is in my hand. Alright. Because I had to futz around with it. So sometimes this happens. That thinner glue sometimes doesn't grab because it dries out before you really get it. And because I fat fingered him a couple times. That's okay. Just go back in. Do it again. Press. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. There's our Hawkeye. Just have to attach him. We got to pick out a base for him. So I think I'm probably going to go with that one. See, now we got Widow on a rock too. We wanted them to really like pose off of each other. So we did, you know, we did the 2 kind of things. I think I'm gonna go with that one. I like that curb. So I'm just gonna prep this while I wait for my thing to dry. Scrape along the sides. That. Put that down. Let's get you on your rock, Hawkeye. Let's get you on your rock. Do that. And then I'm going to use this foot here to make sure that I'm putting it on the right spot. Let's just drop them down really quick. Got a little bit of play time so we can mess with that. Make sure that we're getting a good connection on the rock and on the ground. Sweet, sweet. Alright, there we go. So that's what he's going to look like when we're all done. So the one thing I will say is when I'm gluing into the base, I like the plastic glue a lot. But I've found a lot more success, especially with the Crisis Protocol miniatures, using super glue to glue them from miniature to base. I don't quite know like if it's because the thin cement just doesn't want to grip as well. There's of course little variance in materials and like grip strength, but my suggestion, this is why I have a couple different glues. Use super glue for the parts that you feel like you're having trouble with or anything like that. Or if you just like super glue better. I use plastic glue in everything except for the base. When I attach to the base, I use super glue for miniature to base. And I find it just works better. The plastic glue I've had success with, but it's a little bit more of a struggle. It doesn't seem to bond quite as fast. And so this is just me giving you my 2 cents. Your mileage may vary. Now comes the moment of truth. So, there we go. There's a Hawkeye complete. Didn't even have to put every arrow on individually. Stream's going to be over with in like 5 seconds. Alright, our super awesome Hawkeye is done, diddly done. I think I'm going to let him, so I'm going to come back. There's a little bit of a gap right here that I missed, probably because I was like goofing around and kept dropping him. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to fill that, but I want him to set up first. So we'll come back to him after I finish Widow probably, and I'll show you how I would approach filling this little hip gap right here that happened from when I kind of like messed around. So I am assembling Widow. We're going to her next. Here she is. Oof. Look at that. Widow. Ha-ha! Okay. So moving down. Oh. Aren't you a cheeky monkey, Marco? You want me to start with Widow's head first? Alright, instructions. You're the boss. So it looks like we're looking for hair, which is already kind of coming off the thing. Snip. Oh, well, I know there's somebody out there that probably wants it, but if you want a bald-headed Widow, there you go. No hair. I mean, she does. She got a little bit of hair like right here, but bald head. You ever wanted a bald-headed superhero? We got you covered for those conversions. Don't say we never did anything for you. Put that down. Can't get that sweet flowy hair without making it a different part. Alright, in we go. And take a quick look. One of the nice things about this, though, is that any mold line that's on top of the head, I don't have to worry about smoothing out. Oop, come down a little bit. Oh, yeah, look at that. That's clever girl. So, you might be like, why did they make the hair separate from the head? Well, you'll see that we have this really cool hairline where the hair covers half the face and you get this nice deep indent here. And then you have the ear showing on this side, so you've got that nice motion of the hair. Hopefully that's kind of coming through here. Now, the problem is that that's a really deep undercut, so you can't do that in one piece. So either you have to fill the whole thing and mush it together, or you have to make it in two pieces. And obviously if you mush it together, it's going to look not great, and you're going to lose detail in the face, and it's just not going to look right. So by making it in two parts, you can get this really cool kind of life to the hair, this nice motion, this depth, and you're not sacrificing any of the facial features for the character. And so this is why, you know, this piece happens to be in two parts, so that you can get all of that great detail and not lose anything from the production process. Alright, so it should be pretty straightforward. We're just going to slather this bald head with some glue. Being careful to keep it off of her face, because that would be a disaster. Just going to come in. And give it a little push. Make sure everything lines up. There we go. So, we have ourselves a Black Widow head. Oh. Focus, focus! So I'm going to set that off to the side to dry, because I'm not going to worry about it for a second. I'm going to the arms next. So, step 2 is to build the arms. So we have the full arm, we have the gauntlet, the Widow Sting 2.0 parts up here. And these are unique, so they're numbered. So we're going to refer to the instructions for that. And then we have one shoulder pad, which is number 2. I don't know if this is going to show up, but If you were looking at this like I was, you'd see that this shoulder pad has the Shield logo beautifully etched on it. So, oh, you might be able to catch it a little bit in the thing. All right. So I'm going to do these arms one at a time. So I think we're going to start with A13, which is the arm that will get the Shield shoulder pad on it. The clip. This one gets the A3 top, the A3 Widow's Sting, and then it's also going to get the shoulder pad. So what I'm going to do, so I don't lose the shoulder pad, is I'm going to use that little trick we talked about earlier. I'm just going to take off the extra part at the bottom, and this will make it easier to pick up. It'll also make sure that I don't lose it, just in case I sneeze or something. If the worst should happen, to be fair, I probably would try not to sneeze on my workspace anyway, but sometimes those sneezes catch you unawares. And as we all know, a sneeze comes out at like 50 billion miles an hour, so it's certainly a terrifying incident. So I'm just doing a lot of scraping here to get rid of that injection point roughness. Smooth this down because I really don't want any kind of texture there, since she's supposed to be in like a nice tight battle suit along with her boy Hawkeye. Really, it's because they're acrobats. You got to be able to move, leotards and such, gymnasts. Looks pretty good. Happy with that. Some Widow's Sting. Just gonna grip it real tight between my fingers. Just take off that point too to make it nice and smooth. And again, don't trust your eyes on this because there's always going to be that discoloration where you did the clip. You can see that, how we have like a really light spot here and a dark spot here. So you're never gonna get it to a point to where you can be like, you know, it's gonna look the same, because this is just where the plastic has been like pulled apart. So what you want to do is just use your fingernail, scrape it over the top, and if it's smooth, right? You know that you've gone far enough. Otherwise, you'll just scrape until there's no more part left. So it's the best way to do it. Are we going to get any new base options? I mean, I wouldn't say never. You know, there's always a chance. I can say that right now we're not really doing any kind of deep dive on different base options for the characters, but I think that's one of the cool things is, you know, you can always just dive in and do a little hobbying on your bases too and make them your own. I've seen a couple of really cool like Wakanda bases and stuff people have done, and that's definitely like an option that I would encourage people to do if they wanted to kind of customize and stuff. We decided to do the scenic bases with the characters primarily because we wanted people to have the option to be able to just like have a ready-made city base and you know, have a cohesive way and kind of lower a little bit of the hobby barrier to entry for people so that they could get stuff that looked cool and feel comfortable and confident with it. But obviously, like, all of the traditional hobby rules apply too. So, you know, if you want everything to be on an Asgard base or you want everything to be on a Wakanda base, go for it. Like, grab a couple of tutorials with bases and dive right in. So there's definitely lots of ways to do that. Okay, so now we're going to do the shoulder pad. So looking at the thing, looks like, and my key here, that the shoulder pad's going to come in like that. So you can already see how having this little tab that I cut can really help out. And I could glue it that way, but because I'm a rebel, and you know, I like hurting myself, I'm going to clip that off and do my clean now. So I've got my part. Just gonna come in, set that down. Bring my glue. Just gonna apply a little bit. Like that. Come in because I already test fit it, so I know that this goes down. I'm just going to find the wiggle room. There we go. Part on. So that is one arm done. We'll set that over with the head to let it dry. We'll move on to arm number 2. So this is going to be arm number 12. Click that. This one only has this part here. It doesn't have a shoulder pad. So we'll get in and just clean up where that connection was. Using the back side of my knife again because I don't want to dig in and cut a chunk out, and I know that it's going to do the scraping for me that I need. This side, do a little bit of cleaning. Use my finger test so I can still feel a little bit of a ridge. Just going to very gently go in with the blade. Over it. Now I don't feel that ridge anymore, so there's no bump. So, of course, we always have our ubiquitous CP10 question. I actually reviewed physical proof files for CP10 the other day. So there. I have seen the print files in my personage. And they look real good. And I believe, because Josh is in here to stop me, Dallas actually got final shots of the 2 characters yesterday and assembled them because he gets to do all the fun things first. And he couldn't stop gushing about how much he really enjoyed putting them together. So we are like right towards the finish line on those 2. Everything is coming together. Alright, so there's that. So we're going to glue these 2. So again, I'm just going to take my glue, get a little bit around. And if you don't have an applicator brush or anything like that, I mean, if you've watched Dallas do assemblies, he uses a toothpick, so you can just put a little bit in like a well on a paint palette, or I sometimes use Post-it notes, I mean really anything. And then you can use a toothpick or like any kind of applicator, any kind of plastic stick type device or wooden tool to apply the glue in like a nice, really controlled fashion, and that'll stop you from like glooping it everywhere or gluing your fingers to it. So just knowing where your hands is. Where your hands is, that was perfect, yeah. So, there we go. Is it a red crisis or blue? We've had enough of the blues. CP10 has a secure extraction, or a secure in it. Not an extraction, a secure crisis in it. Which is why there's an imbalance right now in terms of the number of like secures versus extracts, because that set was obviously supposed to release quite some time ago, as indicated by its number, but we weren't happy with the quality we were getting out of it and the experience of how the molds were shooting, so we decided to delay it so that we could make sure that it was the best product we could make it. And yeah, so there you go. But yeah, it's a real fun one. It's based on the Spider-Verse storyline from the comics. So there's your teaser. Okay. Oh, whatever. Alright, so we're going to do her torso, which I see now that I skipped ahead on, but that's okay. It won't change anything. But if we're going to do it, we got to do it right. This is what happens when I go off the res. So, let's see. So in order to do the torso, you know what? Let's not compound our mistakes, because I know I'm going to go too far. So it looks like it's the legs next. So we're going to build the lower half. Get those snipped. Her pistols are also going to go on her hips. Pretty easy. Clean this boot up. Take a look for any. Oh man, you're just really clean. See a little bit right across here. Not much. So I'm just going to take my time and get these lines off. Make sure everything's smooth. Nobody has the full CP10 in their hands. Not yet. We have all the parts. So that's why I say we're close to the finish line. We've got final plastics, it sounds like. Dallas just approved the other day. I approved all the physical proofs for all the print materials. So now they just have to make everything together, and hopefully soon I'll be getting a notification that a sample in its full glory will be on its way to me, and we'll approve that. And then it'll go through the whole gauntlet of everyone else approving it once we say we're happy with it, because we're not the final say. There's a lot of other really great and talented people who make sure that everything's up to snuff. And then it will be in your guys' hands sometime after that. But we definitely haven't forgotten about it. We've been very focused on getting it done. So. Thanos was beautiful. I was very, very happy. He got himself his stamp of approval on my end. So he looks awesome. I don't think Josh is here right now, so maybe I can get away with being cheeky. Dallas won't tell on me. That's not true. He probably would tell on me. Interesting. Okay, so these two things don't go together. So we're just going to attach the pistols. Then we're going to leave the legs alone. We're going to go in. I'm going to stick them onto the torso. I see. I see. You can tell I've not built this lady before. We have lots of plans to give a super vague answer to the question that's been asked. Maybe someday we'll get to do all those plans. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's like kind of, you know, not necessarily within our complete control. There's a whole team of people that make every awesome game happen, but in specific relation to ours. There's a lot of behind the scenes work and stuff like that, so if we get the chance to make something super cool, we absolutely won't hesitate to make it. Get that pistol on there. I'm going to push really good to make sure that that gap is nice and filled up. How long does it take to get final approval on a sculpt? It depends. You know, the whole process from concept to like final product is somewhere between 12 to 18 months typically. With the sculpting and plastic production and stuff being a really big portion of that. But it depends. It depends on the sculpt and you know, all of that. We've been pretty lucky though, like in terms of approvals and just kind of like the care. I think the care and the love we have for the source material really shows through and helps out a lot. But I'm probably biased, so. But it's not too bad. And Marvel's been a joy to work with in pretty much every way. Like I've really appreciated all of the feedback that they've had on character choices, and they're a great resource to be like, okay, well, what era, what age, what should we look at? You know, this Black Widow that I'm putting together right now is really special, not just because I think she's a super fun character, and I'm very excited to get her on the table in the game, but because she really represents kind of the first unique atomic mass interpretation of any Marvel character. We obviously kind of took inspiration from the 90s costume where she had the Red Widow on her torso, and we took some inspiration from what we had seen of the upcoming MCU stuff and the modern era, some of the stuff from the new Black Widow runs, like Web of Black Widow, the standalone short series Black Widow that happened not too long ago where she goes to Madripoor and really messes some people up. And we kind of like took all these influences and we put them together into kind of the Atomic Mass Games blender, and we came up with something that was kind of uniquely our own and yet very paid homage to a lot of the different interpretations of Black Widow to kind of make this the ultimate Black Widow, in a sense, you know, or at least our ultimate Black Widow. So it was really awesome. I mean, it was a pretty amazing time for everyone. And I'm very happy with what we came up with, and I think, you know, I think we did Natasha Romanoff really proud. And it's kind of like one of those crazy childhood like fantasies, right? Getting to contribute something to the universes you love. And here she is. And what better character to do it with? You know, the reason that I have such a strong enjoyment of both these characters, like Widow and Hawkeye, is they kind of represent that everyman, you know, ideal, where Hawkeye is just a guy who practices a heck of a lot with his bow, and he's kind of the human on the team, and yet here's a guy who leads the Avengers several times throughout his history. He has tragedy strike when he loses his hearing, and yet, you know, he perseveres regardless. No superpowers or anything, just armed with a bow and a quiver full of arrows and a ton of self-confidence. And I've really enjoyed that character's path and what he means, you know, to the team and to the universe and the things that he's contributed. And then Widow, depending on, you know, what era you're reading and kind of where you're at in terms of continuity and stuff, she's either just a highly trained operative or she has a version of the super soldier serum that, you know, enhances her. But by the same token, the thing that I've always really liked about Widow is that she has a complicated past, is a really, like, I feel like really fleshed out and robust character with interesting the really interesting backstory, and of course how it impacts her current story. And then you have somebody who, like, combat is not necessarily always her go-to, right? She outthinks everybody, and I think that's a really cool, like, surviving on guile and wit, right? That rogue kind of mentality is really cool. But it was fun to kind of take the opportunity that doing Agent Black Widow presented, and we kind of got the operative Black Widow done in the core set. And I think that's kind of the Black Widow that everyone thinks of in the modern era, kind of that sneaky, not super powerful, but still able to hold their own, and be very effective and sometimes ruthless, but focused on the mission, right? She's the one that's going to make sure that you succeed while the boys are out punching each other in the face. And so I felt like we'd really nailed that, but what I wanted to come back to with this version of Widow, and I think Will Pagani, who had a lot to do with her initial draft of the rules and stuff, really nailed with this version, is the fact that like Widow is a credible threat. Like she is terrifying. People in the Marvel Universe are very scared of her. And so I think it was really fun to kind of like play in that realm where you maintain all of that core Black Widow, you know, the feel and what she means and how she plays and stuff, but you get to change kind of her focus and the way that she interacts and create kind of the, oh yeah, Black Widow will complete the mission, but she'll also kill you. I mean, you know, depending on where you are in terms of her comic livelihood and stuff, she's very dangerous, you know, and she's not really apologetic about it, and she's going to do what she thinks is right. And so it was really fun to play in that zone. And then to kind of play with the S.H.I.E.L.D. identity. Obviously the name plays into that too, right? Because there's so many Black Widows you could do, but we really wanted to kind of focus on one that, you know, took a look back to her days as an operative and an agent, both of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Red Room and stuff. There wasn't any point at which this Widow was going to be in the core set, actually. This Widow came about after the core set Widow by a fair amount, actually. So part of it was an opportunity to kind of get a really great pairing with Hawkeye, because obviously Hawkeye and Widow are a phenomenal pair. There are other people I think that you could argue could also pair well with Hawkeye, but we had an opportunity and we didn't want to lose it. And of course, you know, 2020, there was a couple of really big Black Widow things that were happening at the same time that made a lot of sense. If we were really gonna dive into this character, like this was the time to do it. So so there's a question about Sauron. I don't know where Josh is. If he was here, he'd be losing his mind right now. But yeah, most of it all really comes down to like contracts and rights and lawyers and stuff like that. So from our perspective, you know, we've tried to design the game in a way that everything in the Marvel Universe can be accounted for, regardless of what that is or anything like that. That's obviously like the big goal, right? We want to make sure that, oh, that didn't glue. We want to make sure that there's a place for everything, because, you know, in our golden ideal, we cover everything in the Marvel Universe, because every character has the people that love them, right? There's Stiltman like fanatics out there, as crazy as that seems to me. Oh, I missed that. Let's come back later and get that once that leg is dry. It's because I was talking too much. So, you know, you never know, right? You never know. So you can't have both Black Widows on your team. Somebody asked that, because they're both Natasha Romanoff. And the game is built to acquire that, right? We always knew that we'd wind up doing multiple versions of characters. There was just no way, you know, in the world where we live the dream and we get to do everything we want to do, that wasn't going to be the case. So yeah, so that was definitely a thing that we planned for and we baked kind of into the game. Again, she's got a nice little suit seam across her side, which is meant to be there, but I'm gonna do my little glue trick really quick. and run it over, just because I want to kind of make sure that seam is nice and strong and filled. So this is just a really quick way to kind of, again, address seams that might be a little too thick or a little like pull apart. And it's something that I do consistently on every miniature that I put together. It also adds a little bit of strength to that seam because it goes on the outside. So, all right. So I'm just kind of letting that glue dry really quick before I go back to it. And then we're going to hit this arm. We'll do arm, arm, and then head. But yeah, Widow's pretty cool. We'll be talking more about her and I think doing some fun reveals this week and then into next when I get the chance to put paint on this girl. So I'm looking forward to that as well. All right, glue there. Those arms line up, so we got her in motion, jumping backwards and strafing. Such a fun pose. We had a lot of discussions about the pose on her too, and like how to get it just right and make it feel good, and then of course have it look good in composition with Hawkeye. Josh always makes fun of me because I use the word tableau a lot. But how will it look in tableau? Oh, sorry, I pulled her off camera as I stuck her head on. So there we go. Our completed Black Widow Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ready to get stuck on the base. Just need to let her dry a little bit so that I can clean up that area where I made a mistake by not cleaning up a little injection point. A little bit of a seam over this leg here, so just address that now. This other side too. So again, this is just a step that I like to do consistently. Now if this doesn't address the seam in a way that I'm happy with, which in this case it might not, or like on Hawkeye, but that was more user error than it was anything else, I can always go back and I can use some of my either green stuff or my pre-made like modeling putty, and I can fill up those gaps. So let's do that while we wait for Widow to dry before we stick her on her base here. What was there a Josh message? I don't see a Josh message. Oh, you got one of the Team Tactic cards handy? I have all the Team Tactic cards handy, man. See, they're all in this pack. So they're all like right there. Which one do you want? The best one? Sure, the best one. I was gonna do some gap filling, Josh. You're kind of like in my way. Well, here, this one's pretty fun. Whoop. This one's called Professionals, and it is a Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton team-up card. And so Clint Barton, they both spend 2 power. If Clint Barton damages an enemy character with an attack this round and Natasha Romanoff is within range 2, basically Natasha gets to take a asset or civilian token from the damaged character and put it on Natasha Romanoff. So this is kind of them like working together, yes, potentially in Budapest or other places in the world. And I loved the idea of like Hawkeye shooting something out of like somebody's hands and then Natasha Romanoff like sliding through the legs, grabbing it and making off with it. So it's kind of the artwork for it. And you can see our poor little AIM guy who is getting devastated by it. So that is one of the cards that comes in the pack. Since I was told to show off one, that's what I'll show. That's what I'll show. Okay, back to gap filling. So I'm going to use I'm just going to use the pre-mix stuff. So it's just basic modeling putty. And I'm going to use this thing. So the cool thing about this is it doesn't require any mixing or anything like that. It shrinks a lot. So you can kind of be pretty liberal with it. And you can sand it down and stuff to make it smoother. But all I'm doing is just taking my little clay shaper and I'm just pushing it into the gap. And then what I can do is I just take my finger and I just rub it, rub the excess off. You could use a Q-tip or stuff too. I don't have a Q-tip handy, so I'm not as concerned about it. You do have to work kind of quick with this stuff. It does dry fairly quick. And then of course anything that's not smooth you're just going to sand out after. So while it does dry pretty tight, you don't have to worry too much about being really clean. But you know, you're going to save yourself a bit of trouble doing it this way and making sure that it's as smooth as you can get it before. So this is just kind of how I'm going to address that little gappage that's going on. I've had a lot of success with this. You can do the same thing with green stuff. Green stuff's a little trickier to work with in my opinion. But it all works the same. So it's really just about kind of getting it on there. And then, like I said, once it's dry, taking kind of a fine fine-tooth file, or like an emery board for nails, like a really nice one. And then Vallejo does make a version of this. So there's a plastic putty or something from Vallejo, which is basically the same thing. So there's a lot of different options. The Tamiya one just happens to be the one that I have. I've used the Vallejo one before. It works really well. Again, you can just use green stuff. So, but this will shrink down and tighten up really nice. And then what I'll do is I'll just take that emery board and I'll just kind of sand it down. And that's how I fix that gap. And then, you know, depending on gap, I say seam, the gap that I made by not being very careful, because as you saw, I dropped them like 3 times. I can honestly say I've never used the liquid green stuff before, so I don't know how that compares to like the modeling putties or the plastic putties, but I have had a lot of success with the plastic putties and stuff. If you wanted to add the bowstring, the easiest way to do it would be fishing line and super glue. Would be my suggestion to you. There's a lot of great tutorials from historical games and things like that. So, there's plenty of different ways to kind of address that. Yeah, so there's a couple of people asking about the Natasha Romanoff versus Romanova. So the original Black Widow is Romanova. And part of this is because there is discrepancy everywhere as to what they call her. If you actually follow Russian naming conventions, it should be Ova, because that's the feminine, and Ov is the male. So we went with Romanova, which was grammatically the correct one and one that gets used a lot for her in the comics and stuff. But there's also Romanov, and basically because of like everything that's going on with Black Widow and stuff, the Romanov was the preferred one at the time when we did this. So yeah, it wound up being kind of one of those funny things where I learned a lot about you know, how Russian naming conventions work, which was pretty cool. And then I learned that, you know, Marvel kind of has accepted it in the comics as this kind of nod to the fact that the people who typically use her correct name, like Romanova, are the people who understand her past and her history. And Romanov is kind of the Western kind of mistake for that. And so it was interesting to kind of read and see some of the thought processes on that and how it kind of worked out and stuff. So I'm just taking my file and I'm just really gently filing down over the filler, but I can just take, again, I can do my little nail test, and this stuff tightens so nice that you're not even going to really see it. So that little gap seam that I had there is going to be nice and filled, and the little excess stuff is so tight to the plastic that you really can't even notice it. And if I really wanted to get in there, you can scrape it off really easy, so it's pretty simple to like kind of file down too if I want to keep going. But that is pretty much my process for whenever I have stuff like that. It works really fast. If I wind up with something that's bigger, or that I don't think that the putty will work on very well, because it only works on like really tight seams, you want to make sure and go with the green stuff. So, Josh, have you put up the Hawkeye card for people yet? Has that happened? Have you been everybody's favorite hero and shown them the man, the myth, the legend? Because you should, now that you're in here. And then they can know, and I could talk more about him. Or not. Whatever you want, Josh. You're in charge. You're the boss. You're the big bad boss. They took care of it. I don't know who you're talking about. Who's they? I don't even know what's happening anymore. Alright, so we got a two-part little connection thing here for Widow's matching destroyed Hydra thing. Again, I'm just going to use that plastic glue to kind of run across this seam. And I'll cover that up really nice. Okay, and then our Widow. Now she's dry. I'm going to fix my mistake because I think I was talking and not paying attention. That's okay though. No one will actually probably see this side of her, but I'll know, and it will drive me insane for so many reasons. Oh. Looks like I wasn't very good on that leg, so back to our putty. I'm just going to come in and a little bit of a so we just have a little bit of a gap here under the leg. And there's my So I'm just going to do a little bit of fill on the underside of her legs. Again, not that anyone will ever see any of this, but I'll know. And it will drive me absolutely crazy. And because they're mine, and they'll forever be on my shelf, I can't have them driving me crazy. So, there you go. Groovy. Don't clean that out in my actual water cup, that'd be bad. Notice that her arm's a little loose, so I'm just going to do a quick seam here. Let that thin cement kind of work for me. Just going to get in here. Do a quick bit of filing. Take off that because we didn't need it. So you can see how it just comes off really nice, hopefully, with the file. So again, you just want a light touch, or you want a really fine file, and it'll help you just kind of like smooth everything out. And then come in and we'll just glue her to her rock. My key pretty much makes it very easy to know where she's going to go. There we go. So we just need to, oh no! Tried for the glamour shot and it didn't work. Should have known. We should have known. Alright, so we'll just set her like that to dry. Alright, there we go. So I think at that point we'll just call it good. All I have to do now is just attach her to a base, and they will be squared away and ready to go. So hopefully you found maybe some new tricks or some tips, or if nothing else, just a fun way to hang out and relax. Thank you guys so much for being here today and hanging out. Be sure to check out the stream on Thursday. Dallas will have a really cool surprise for you. I believe he'll either be assembling or painting. But you won't want to miss that. Also be sure to watch our website, our social media and all that stuff. Social media especially, because Josh will be posting up a sneak peek at Hawkeye's stat card sometime soon. I believe it's supposed to be today, depending on approvals. So if you want to know more about what Hawkeye does in the game and get his full look after the panel of the play article that was posted up, be sure to watch that. It'll be really fun. Otherwise, join Dallas on Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, as he dives into some of the other releases. And then, of course, be sure to watch out for me next Tuesday. I'm going to be putting some paint on Black Widow and talking more about her. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Really excited to continue on with you guys, and stay safe. Be happy, and we will talk with you guys very, very soon. All right, guys, take care.